Hello, I am Thortrilisk, and welcome to my first D&D video on this channel. So today I'm going to be talking kind of about some basic visuals that make certain things in D&D, particularly combat, make sense. I think that these are useful things for certain people, a certain type of people, that want to be able to imagine things well, and it just helps flesh out the world, and it helps them a lot to be able to imagine things a certain way. So, the first thing that some people will point out as being unrealistic. First of all, let me go over something that I think is really important. And that's a phrase that I borrowed from my cousin, which is mechanics over thematics, which is basically if something doesn't make sense, but it's fun, that's awesome. It works. Basically, if it makes the rules work, it doesn't really matter if it's wholly realistic. But some things that don't seem realistic at first glance are realistic, and I'm going to go over them right now. The first one is one attack per round. And this is... I don't think that it's unrealistic, because it's not that it takes me 6 seconds to swing a sword once, because that would be unrealistic. It doesn't take anyone 6 seconds to swing a sword unless the sword is way too big for them. Or they're just like super duper frail. In which case I guess the sword could also be too big for them, and the only sword that would be the right size would be like a little tiny knife, which someone would argue is not a sword, and they're probably right. But what it is I'm constantly fighting with this person and trying to gain positioning, trying to find an opening to attack him. And your initiative is am I going to act on an opening that I see before he acts on an opening he sees? That's kind of how I imagine initiative and attacks. But as you progress in your class and you gain multi-attack, what that's doing is that's you becoming more confident and more capable. And realizing holes where you didn't notice them before, not holes, noticing like gaps in your opponent's defense where you didn't notice them before, and also being confident enough that you can attack them and retreat in a proper manner. Unless, of course, you're a barbarian, in which case reckless attack just means, oh, I'm going to hit him, I don't care what it does to me. But that's barbarians. So that's that. The next thing is ranged weapons. The reason you only get one attack per 6 seconds is actually because it might take you 6 seconds to prepare a shot and fire it properly. Right? Fire it aiming at a target. It's kind of hard hitting people with a ranged weapon. And if it's a crossbow, it might take you 6 seconds to draw the crossbow, because some of those things are really heavy and just easier to use, which is why they have that property that they have. But of course, as you improve with a lot of ranged weapons, it makes sense you can attack with them faster. It's more instinctive, the aiming and all of that stuff that was difficult before. The next thing is attacking somebody if you're in melee range and you attack them with a ranged weapon. And the reason that's the way it is because if you're really close to someone, they can try to knock the weapon out of your hands, or they can try to just swat it around and make it difficult for you to try to hit them while keeping your weapon outside of their influence range, basically. And if you're 10 feet away, well, now they can't do that. So now you can just shoot them with your bow. So then the next thing is disengaging. And what that is that's when you're fighting them and you just want to make basically a tactical retreat. And it takes a full action to do, unless you're a rogue, because it is hard to try to hit someone and also try to get away from them in a quick manner. Unless you have specific training in doing that, it's for the most part going to be, I'm going to try to hit them and then try to get back to my normal position without being hit myself. And unless you're a swashbuckler, in which case your fancy footwork is basically you just being really good at that. If you've seen The Princess Bride, the way that Inigo and Wesley fight on top of the cliffs is an excellent example of how you'd be able to strike and get out quickly enough. If you haven't seen The Princess Bride, it's a great movie. I would totally recommend watching it. Now, if you're walking past someone with the intent to attack them, right? If you're walking kind of like around them and you're going to attack them, that's fine because now you're engaging with them, and then it's going to take them a second to try to attack you back. So that's why that one works. That's why if you go towards someone meaning to attack them, they don't get an attack of opportunity. Whereas if you go to someone not meaning to attack them and you go past them, then they can attack you because with the one you're engaging with them and with the other one you're not. Then the next thing is hit points. And this one, so all of these are really just my interpretation, the way I think about the way the rules are presented. But hit points, I think, are particularly difficult to translate well. So if you have a different translation, totally feel free to use yours. This is just one that I heard, one that my friend uses, and I think it kind of makes sense. It's almost a measure of your stamina and your ability to do like last second saves. It's basically, oh, I barely dodged that weapon right there. Now I'm more tired. Because a lot of combats, each round is 6 seconds, and a lot of combats only last like 5 rounds. If your combat lasts 10 rounds, that's a pretty long combat. And that's only a minute in real time. Which means that you're probably not actually landing strikes. It's probably just last second blocks and saves. And until the very end of your hit points, at which point you actually begin to take damage. Now, Barbarian Rage now makes a whole lot more sense. It's basically that they're really good at taking advantage of their adrenaline, and that allowing them to do certain things that in other people require a lot of effort and energy, but in a barbarian it's like, yeah, I can just kind of do that because I'm really good at harnessing my adrenaline and being properly angry. The next thing is armor class, and particularly the way this affects the way you hit. And this one's kind of just, there was one friend that said, I don't really like how I miss. Even if I roll a 13, like, oh, you missed him pretty bad, right? Like, I feel like my character is better such that if I roll a 13 in doing well, I should have, like, I don't know, feels like missing just makes it seem like we're all not good at the game. And to a certain point, right, up to maybe probably less than 10, I think, a roll of less than 10 total is basically, yeah, your character misses. Like, just purely misses. Because most things have an armor class of higher than 10. But if you go higher than 10, that means that you either would have hit them but they dodged, or you would have hit them but they have armor and that protected them. Right? So if I have light armor, let's say I have studded leather armor and a +5 in dexterity. That puts my armor class at 17. If I rolled a 13 against them, I would say it that I would have hit them except they dodged out of the way. They jumped out of the way or however, right? They dodged. However, if I rolled a 16 to hit, that still misses, but I would say that I hit him, but his leather armor protected him. Or, if you're wearing plate armor, the same thing goes. Well, except for if you roll like a 12, you'd still just have hit the plate armor and nothing happened because you didn't hit it hard enough or in the right spot to go through it well. Now, I think it's sometimes useful to think about these things, but you don't necessarily have to narrate them because that can sometimes slow down the combat. But if you like that, if you like hearing almost the narrative of the fight, then you can totally go to your DM and say, hey, I think it'd be really cool if you narrated our attacks. And probably to the other players at the table and see if they think that would be fun too. Because if he then starts narrating all the attacks and it then makes your combats longer, the other people might not be having fun, and they're like, why is our DM doing this? I'm not enjoying this. So I'd go talk to all of the players at your table and maybe say, I have a little suggestion, and why don't we try it for a little bit? And if you don't like it, that's perfectly fine. And then, unarmored defense. There's 2 classes that get it, monks and barbarians, and they get 2 different types of it. Monks get to use their wisdom, and barbarians get to use their constitution. And the way I imagine this is, monks are really good at anticipating their opponent's moves. So kind of they're able to use their dexterity better. Almost. And just they're able to use it wisdom amount better. And then I feel like the barbarian, I'm just really tough. You can hit me with certain things, and it just doesn't affect me the same way it would other people. Slash, I just have a higher bar before I have to start using my actual core stamina. Going back to hit points, I think this is why the fighter ability is called Second Wind, right? It's not called Battle Medicine. It's called Second Wind. It is me just summoning up a little bit of extra strength because I'm tired. So I think that's just about everything, except I forgot to mention one thing, going back to the very beginning, about 1 attack per 6 seconds. With rogues, they only ever get 1 attack because they get really good at figuring out the little chinks in armor, right? That is their development and the reason they're able to get higher damage. It's kind of like, I've been watching this guy, and I've been learning how to do this over my years of being a rogue, such that when I was only at first level, I would only spot kind of small weaknesses and be able to exploit them for an extra 1d6 damage, right? Obviously, they don't think in terms of that, but they think of I was able to exploit his little weaknesses to make him, to require an even more epic save, require something more difficult out of him. But now that I'm even better at this job, now I've learned how to exploit I know how to find the tiniest chinks and exploit them to cause maximum difficulty and damage. As well as casting a spell. Casting a spell is very similar. It's basically every spell, it takes the same amount of time to say the same words and do the same gestures and use your same material components and call upon the same powers. Right? That the amount of time it takes to do something like that doesn't change from first level to 10th level, but the thing that changes is how much power you're able to channel. So I think that's everything. If I missed anything, I might do a follow-up video to this. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.